people waiting.
Oh, nice. We are live. That's what YouTube stream shows. Can we get the confirmation from any audience, any listener on YouTube chats? Oh, nice.
Hi, folks. Let us know if we are audible and visible.
We are live. That's what YouTube stream. No comments yet.
Yep. Hi, Harshit. Can you hear us?
Just say yes. That will help us. Also, unsure. It's
Great. All right. Hi, folks. Thanks for joining. This is the second episode of FOSS 101. It is our brand new initiative where it's managed end to end by our FOSS Clubs program. The idea is to bring together people who've been very actively contributing to open source initiatives and are very active in the FOSS space and, have them over to talk about their journey, how open source has been for them, and maybe all of us can learn something from them. So yeah, today we have a much awaited guest with us. We have Anoop, who is the creator and lead maintainer of Bruno, which is a git-friendly, offline-only open source API client, which has been gaining a lot of traction recently. So yeah, hi Anoop, welcome to the stream.
Yeah, and hey, Vishal. Thanks for having me here. I'm happy.
So right, I mean, first of all, we'd like you to introduce yourself. Tell us.
Sure. So I'm Anoop. I'm the creator and lead maintainer of Bruno. I'm a software engineer by trade. I've been programming for professionally for 10 years now. Uh,
Nice. So, okay, right before we get into the deep dive, just to clarify, our audience is mostly going to be students since this program is sort of targeted at FOSS clubs. So, and many of these people are looking to, start their journey of contributions to open source. So, we'll try to explain most of the topics we discuss in very layman terms, right? So, yeah, Anoop, the much awaited question: what is Bruno?
So Bruno is a open source API client. So let's say that when you are building any kind of software, you usually have a front end and you have a back end, and you want to connect to the back end and test some APIs, right? So Bruno is an API client that allows you to call those APIs and test it, see the JSON response and things. The key thing that differentiates Bruno from everything that's out there today is that we save your API collection, the requests, as files on your file system. So if you have ever used this note-taking app called Obsidian, Obsidian has a similar philosophy where they take your notes and put it on your files. All right. So Bruno does not, it's specifically meant to be this philosophy called as file over app, where everything is saved as files, and that's what separates Bruno out from every other API client out there.
Right. So basically, the USP basically is that we are Bruno is local only,
Yes,
and
yes,
offline first client. Great.
yes.
So,
Yeah.
of course, what I mean, I am aware of this since I watched your talk at India FOSS. But what is the history behind the name of Bruno?
So, so initially the project I had called it as Graph Node. I was doing something like I was building GraphQL first. I was struggling to come up with a name, so I called it Graph Node. But then the turning point for me was, I came to know one day that MySQL, right? We all use MySQL. I always thought that the my in that meaning me, right? It's like MySQL. That's what I thought all my life. And all of a sudden I get to realize that it's actually the name of the daughter of the creator, right? And the same person who created MySQL also created MariaDB, where Maria is the second daughter. It's like, okay, so then I kind of realized that, okay, why do we struggle to, kind of come up with some crazy names? Like anybody who starts a product or any company or anything, the first thing that you kind of fuss over is what do we call it, right? Then you have to keep it short. You invest so much time trying to come up with something smart, where I thought that the easiest and the right, not the right thing, it's good to name it in honor of somebody in your family or your friend or anybody whom you want to pay homage to, living or dead. So I chose, I love my pet, Bruno. So I decided that, okay, I'm going to call him Bruno, and that's how the name came to be.
Like, so he is sort of a celebrity in the tech space right
Yeah,
now.
yeah. Yes.
So, I mean, you've been working on this project for a long time, right? So, is it just you, or is there a complete team behind Bruno?
So I've been working on this project for 2 years, mostly alone for 2 years, and I would say almost in very minimal limelight or without no visibility at all or any kind of traction for 2 years. And in October we had a crazy traction, like unexpected rise. Like to give you an example, for 2 years we were like totally people who had used Bruno was like 300 or 500 people totally who had used Bruno. But in a month, it just jumped to 25,000 just in a month. So we had after that we have a lot of open source community who is helping Bruno. A lot of contributions after October, like just 5 months back, has been by the community. And then recently, I've started a company around Bruno, and just we have one full-time employee who is currently working on Bruno with me.
And how many maintainers do we have right now?
So on the GitHub repository, there are 8 people, including me. And in terms of active maintainers, I would say there are 3 active maintainers: me, this person called Martin Sefsek, and one person called ITS Timon, not Timon, Timon. So both of them help me maintain the open source edition of it.
So, I mean, the obvious question, there is a sea of API clients out there, right? So, what was your initial idea, or when did you feel the need for creating such a client? And just another API client, maybe?
The client, the API client ecosystem, there are two prominent players in the market. One is Postman. I think they have majority of the market, and then you have Insomnia. And so I've used both Postman and Insomnia in the past. To me, Postman was there was a lot of, I would call it bloatware, too many things that don't want in an API client that was there in Postman. And then I used Insomnia. I came from Postman to Insomnia. But there was this one problem for me, which was that anytime I go so I had a day job for 10 years. Today I'm working, running my own company, but I was, a lead engineer for a team. So anytime I go to a new team, and if I have to play with that API, right, I had to ask this question from people that, can you give me a Postman collection or Insomnia collection, right? I had to ask them. And the way that Postman and Insomnia takes your API collection, it exports it into files, and these files gets shared among people, right? So there is no central way of managing it. Now just imagine a life without Git, right? Why you have a source code, I have a source code, somebody else has a source code. So it was very hard. So API collections were like that. And yes, if you wanted to manage it centralized, you will have to pay for a paid plan, right? For with Postman or Insomnia, you take a paid plan, and many companies didn't do that. Many companies didn't feel that the pain was so much that they wanted to pay it. And so a lot of teams in the world just live off these big JSON collections where people just it's all shared. There is no central place. So that was a key thing that bothered me. I was like, okay, I need to fix this. And so I decided to actually work on an API client. I was like, okay, I'm going to do a miniaturized version of Postman, right? and which will allow, like I wanted to keep everything open source so that people can self-host this server side also. So Insomnia has this business model where their client is open, their front end code is open, but their back end code, which is responsible for acting like a centralized version control system, that is closed source and that is paid, right? So so I wanted to solve that problem and say, okay, we're going to build both of these things open source and make sure that companies can self-host it and try to solve this problem. So I started building it. Almost 8 years, 8 months into building kind of a prototype, right? I came to this sudden realization that what if there was no server-side component at all? What if these collections could be just put into a file system? So the key point that I want to emphasize is this is not something that I started with. I started with something, something that I wanted to, at the knowledge that I had 2 years back. But down the lane, I realized that, okay, this could be done. And at that moment, I had this actually the dilemma of, because with if I had built both API, I mean, the front end and the back end, there was some kind of a business model which could be in the future where you could allow people to use your cloud version, right? But if the cloud goes away and if everything is offline, right, just like VS Code, it is very hard to achieve any sort of monetization from a project. Very hard. So I was like, but then I finally chose that yes, this, like, I knew that no other company would build this tool because there is no monetization, there is no immediate financial anything that could happen, and other companies won't do it because it will kill their business model. So it's like this thing doesn't exist and it needs to be bought into this world. And I decided that okay, we're gonna we'll figure out, but it's the right thing to do is build this. This needs to exist in the world, and I started building it for another year. I keep on making improvements. So that's kind of a short history of how the file-based model came into place.
Right. So we'll definitely talk about these revenue models for other API clients bit later. But so I think it would be fair to say that Bruno right now is one of the most popular offline only API clients, right? So what would
Yeah.
be, say, the primary three or four reasons and benefits behind an offline only API client, and why you think that Bruno, as you have said, is going to be the de facto client? Like,
Yeah, I have a maybe coming from, I don't know, but I have a very strong conviction that in 2 years, Bruno will be not Bruno, any application that uses file-based approach is going to be the future. I very strongly believe that. Now, why offline only, right? So one is key thing is co-location. So when I'm talking about co-location, let's say that you have a backend code base. Okay, let's take a payments service, right? Now, when you're writing an API collection, what is an API collection? It is an example of um, requests, right? How you should use your payment service. Now, this is very closely related to your service itself, which means that this API collection needs to be inside that payment gateway service in your source code. It has to be there because it is related. People with the today's model, anybody who uses Postman or Insomnia or any other thing where they maintain the API collection separately, that is not collocation because these things are related. It needs to be together. And Bruno allows you for every backend code base, you can actually create a folder called API collection or resources or whatever, and inside that, store this collection. Once you do that, what happens is whenever any developer in a company or you clone a project, right? That API collection is right there in that source code, and it can be versioned using Git, right? And so that is one thing. Co-location is the first benefit, very important benefit, right? So if I go to a company and if I download a code base, I want that collection to be there. I don't want to ask that question is what I believe should go away. Can somebody share me that collection? We want to remove that question. So that is one, co-location. Second thing is security, right? So if you use any centralized version control, right, be it, I'm not going to name a company, any centralized version control, you are essentially saving your API request in somebody else's cloud, right? Now, it's okay to save API requests, but anytime you have to do secret, right? people want to restore the AWS access keys or any kind of thing, you are actually saving it in their cloud. And this is a deal breaker for many. Like it's a big security loophole, right? So you want to control that. Like for example, if I have to be utterly honest, if I was a big organization, right, or some organization, I for no reason don't want my API keys to. I should have control over it, right? So so I felt that these tools were lacking in terms of enforcing that security. The model is trust us, we'll take care of it, right? That's the model. So Bruno is like, you get to own it, you get to use environment variables which are local, right? Just like how you do in code, how do you have a .env file, right? We have something very similar. You have a .env file, you can put your secrets there, right? So I would say the second reason is data security. The third reason, the most important reason for me, I would say, is our open source roots. When I mean roots, the reason I say roots or is our belief is because we are not a fully FOSS, completely open source, right? We have open source 95% of it, but there is a small percent of it which we used to be sustainable and build the company. So we are very community driven, and more than that, see, I feel that any student or any developer in the world, right? This is a very developer tool. Like as a developer, what tools do I use? I use an operating system. I use an editor. I use a command line. I use some libraries. All the dev tools should be open source.
Right.
It is the right model because we build it and we maintain it together, right? So and you have seen this frustration across the industry where people keep jumping from one client to another client, and these API clients have not made their business models work well, because of which people keep looking for alternatives. And we want to kind of stop that. Like we want to make sure that everybody can have an open source API client, which they can run it on the collections are saved on their system, right? So that's another reason. It is majority of the code base, 95% of it is open source, what we have.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So we have a question from the chat. Shivam is asking, why could we not just take Insomnia's client code and write the backend bit ourselves and make it open source?
Yes, there are something you could, right? That possibility has always existed, even from 5 years ago, when they made a business stand that, hey, our client is open but server side is not. You could, but you would first it's not easy, because you will have, if you want to do that, you have to essentially fork Insomnia. You have to maintain the front end and the back end. It's not easy when one company maintains it. The only way is you have to fork it and independently maintain it. But the right answer there is not even that. It's that server side is a mistake that shouldn't exist. We are taking that away. That's actually not needed. If you use Bruno, everything is on your file system, right? So you don't need a server at all. So we don't plan to ever introduce any kind of server side. Now, the right question maybe is that you can actually take Insomnia, since it's open source, and you can, instead of it talking to the backend, you can write code to make it talk to the file system. That is that's a valid approach. But server is, it's actually not needed. And sometimes I feel that, like, all these 10 years, sometimes companies don't innovate because if it goes against their business model, right? So Insomnia cannot do that because they make money using for by charging for collaboration. So and we've gotten used to this for 10 years, this notion that an API client should have both a client and a server, right? It's kind of we've been taught that, but no, you actually don't need that. You can just have a client and save it in your file system.
Right. So hope that answers your question, Shivam. We'll take the next question maybe later because we sort of plan to have a detailed discussion on that. Yeah. So Anoop, so this is a bit of an existential question.
Yeah,
So
sure.
I mean, you have like 10 years of experience in tech. So I'm assuming you would have been a pretty good place, right? So why make the tough decision of leaving your tech job to start and say entrepreneurial FOSS project?
Um, so there are many aspects of it. So it's a bit existential, and there is a bit of a philosophical angle. So see, if tech pays generally well, right? If you're in tech, if you've been doing it for 10 years, you are generally paid well. So entrepreneurial comes with a big risk, right? But there is something in the freedom of really working on what you want to work on, right? I feel I'm privileged to be in that position where I can get up and work on things that I really want to work on, right? So that's the core thing, that freedom to do what you really want to do. um, and this has to be coupled with you need to make sure that there is a business angle to this, in the sense, like, I am not altruistic where I would say, if I'm being utterly honest, I'm not saying that, hey, I'm going to drop everything, every possible career growth that I have, and try to do this, right? No. There is a business, but then there is also, to be honest, there is the impact that you get to create, right? And that itself is worth it, right? I would be even open to, for example, say, hypothetically say, I'm going to take 1 or 2 years off of my career, and I'm going to work on this fully free time, full time, because it has that impact, right? um, yeah, so it that alone is worth it, the impact that Bruno has. And there are many, like, when you do FOSS, it's actually, what is it? It's a win-win, right? If I had stayed in some company and continued to work while Bruno was growing, right, I would say the trajectory that I took with Bruno is going to be more. Uh, it's going to be a better future for me personally, because I there are so many connections that I've made with Bruno, so many community people that I've interacted with, so much of network that I have built, right? Which means that my job opportunities, right, are more. If I want to work in the future, like, for whatever reason, 3 5 years down the lane, Bruno did not do good, and it did not make, and I have to move on for any reason. If that happens, the community and the network that I've built would really help me. So if you look at it any way, even career, even money, even impact, all of that, it ticks, right? But the key important thing here to do is that I did not start Bruno as, like, I did not quit my job and say I'm going to do this. Right? This was a side project. Like, I knew I wanted to see if I could make, yes, there was a ulterior, some kind of a angle where I thought I should be able to somehow monetize this. But I started it as a side project. I did not kind of quit and do this, and now it and to be utterly honest, it was chaotic. Like, it was out of control. Like, I have spoken to a lot of people in Force United, in the community, in my job, right? The product never got traction, never. And out of the blue, one day people love it. So a lot of it is outside, outside your control. It's chaotic.
I mean, yeah, I can relate first to being the impact that what's drive people, and secondly, I mean, it's quite. I mean, I've seen this a lot that the community has its way of giving back eventually, right?
Yeah, yeah,
As you mentioned.
yeah. On that regard,
So I
I've always seen that whatever you do, the dots will connect in the future. You, like, even, like, I'm just saying, even if you do a small project, any project, even if you are trying to learn something, or you're trying to learn a new technology, right? The impact of it is not immediately obvious, but the important thing to do is keep pushing, keep learning new things, and keep helping, and it will someday in the future, it's going to connect. That's been my uh, experience. Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah. So, as you mentioned, you've now decided to work on Bruno full time. So, how, I mean, first, how difficult was that decision to make? And now that you've actually started giving, more time to the project, how has it been like?
So the decision was very difficult. For me, it was easy. So I see there are some physical traits which people inherently have. They have a risk. taking capability that widely varies, right? Somebody would not take the risk. To me, uh, I actually, if I want to do it, I'm going to do it. No matter I'm not, I'll mess things up and somehow figure out things later. So I'm very, I would say, I have a lot of tolerance for risk. I'll tell you, for example, in my career, 2 years, 2.5 years down the lane, in Tata LXI, the company that I work, out of the blue, I decided that I'm going to start a company and I'm going to work full time. Without no business, I had a business idea thinking that I'll go to schools and I'll sell them attendance management software. That's what I thought. And I put my paper, I just jumped right into it. It didn't pan out well. 1 year down the lane, I was broke. Like I had zero money. I had to borrow money from strangers to, to drive to my office. I was that broke. But I would do it again. That is, so if I want to do something, I won't hear even anybody saying that, Anoop, don't do that. That's too risky. I want to actually experience it for myself. I want to know that truth. I'm not going to believe you unless I experience it myself. So with Bruno, I was telling my family that, hey, I'm going to, I want to do this full time. My family was like, Anup, we have seen too much antics from you. Just calm down. Just relax for some time. Let the project grow. How much money do you have? I'm just discussing numbers openly, right? So I had at the time in my bank account, it was like 3 lakhs. That's it. And so that's all that I had. And I had a home loan. So I have a home, which is on a home loan. So I have to pay EMI for it. But on in bank, that's all that I had, 3-4 lakhs. I was like, I'm going to jump in full time. I'll figure out something. I'll do trainings on the side to make up, but I want to work on Bruno full time. And my family was like, just calm down, just wait for some more time. So I reached out to Samagata, right? There's a foundation, Samagata Foundation. I reached out for them for funds. Uh, I reached out for them for funds not because I wanted the fund. I wanted to somehow convince my family, telling them that, hey, I have money. You guys don't worry. We're going to be all right. So I reached out to them and told them that, hey, I want to work on this full time. I'm crazy about this. I just want to do it. Can you guys help me with some, and I was very open with them, telling them that, no, this is not a fully FOSS, like I do have a business. I want to make it a self-sustaining business. But we do, a majority of our code is open source. So can you help us in the initial days? And Samagata was gracious enough. So they lent us 5 lakhs. They donated us 5 lakhs. They transferred it to my account. And then I went and told my family that, hey, now we have 8 lakhs of budget. So this is 1 year of runway. So we're going to do it full time. So the family was like, for my family, it was more than the money. It was the vote of confidence that, okay,
Like,
somebody is crazy enough to give this guy 5 lakhs. That means that there is something in the product. Because my family is not, they don't understand tech, as deeply as I do. So yeah, that helped. That vote of confidence helped. So that was the reason I was like, then I began doing Bruno full time from in January. Was there a second question that you had? The first question was how difficult it was.
yeah, so now that you're finally working on it full time, so how has it been like?
So I started in January full time. So starting a business and running a business is not easy, I would say. There are a lot of paperwork that comes with it. You have to register you have to register your company. You have to make sure that you keep your accounts right. You have to hire an accountant, some accounting firm, to do this right. So and then if you want to charge, you have to set up payment gateways, and that is it was a lot of pain to set up a proper payment gateway, get approvals for it. And at Bruno, we still don't have an office. I do this from home, and starting this company one person in the beginning was very difficult, which means there was a lot of paperwork to do. And I also, to me, it's a very important decision. You have to also think long term. This is not like when you're starting a company, it's a very big decision. It's not something that you can throw away after 6 months and move on, right? So It was difficult. I would not say difficult in the sense, like there was a lot of work involved, which means it took away some time of mine from working on the project to set things up. And yeah, so working technically on a product, writing code is, for me, it's easy. Or like it's these are two different things. Building a company takes a different skill set actually, and you also have to be strategic about how you're going to make money, because that's how a company is going to survive. You have to think through a business model that can last long, right? I think we'll talk about this future later, but I had options to go with VC funding. I did not, we had, with the level of Bruno growth had, we had 10 VCs reach out. I did not say yes to anybody. And, if I can't prove it, but if I wanted, I feel extremely confident that we could have raised, some kind of a round, maybe 500,000 as a seed. I would have I can also, I'm not just a good coder, I can paint a vision, I can convince people, I can get people excited. So I feel very confident that we could have raised, at least maybe $500,000, but I didn't want to do that. Yeah.
No, I mean, kudos to you, for going through all of that and not giving up in the process. And I mean, I've seen you struggle with setting up the payment gateways, and
Yeah.
I'm sure the journey has been a lot of pain, but I hope it gets better. And I think it's already, I mean, we've set up the basic stuff up, right?
Yeah.
So pre-registrations are going on for the golden edition. We'll talk about that later as well. Right. So you mentioned you were, working on Bruno as a side project for the longest amount of time. So, what did your day-to-day life look like at that point of time when you also had a day job, and then there was Bruno, and compared to now when you have maybe a bit more time to work on the project?
So, so it does take away the reality is that it is not easy to do both, right? If you are at your job, uh, you cannot your open source efforts cannot come at the cost of your job performance, right? You cannot take time away from your job to do open source. So I was, in my previous company, which I worked for 8 years. I was, so one of the, I would say, one of the top guys there. So but I did not have actually hobbies outside work. That is actually the truth. I never go out with friends. I party less. I do party, but um, it comes at a cost. It comes at a cost. It's not, you are not going to have everything. You're not going to have where after Friday evening you finish your job, you're going to a movie, you're partying with your friends, then you go on trips, right? I can't remember, like, you can't have everything. So there is always an opportunity cost. And for me, I've always been fascinated about building products, creating something. And so I would say it's some kind of an obsession in some way. So after I finish my work, I would come, and make time to work on Bruno. Saturdays and Sundays, I would sit and code Bruno. But also the other thing is that since it was an open source and a side effort, I did not have the obligation to kind of do it every single day. There were nights where I would not sleep. I would continuously work on it. And there were months where I would not touch the project, right? So having, in many ways, that 2 year visibility, 2 year struggle without any visibility was also a boon, that I could keep the project ready and, work on it patiently, fix things, improve it before the time comes for it to, to grow. So yeah, I didn't have a routine. Like, I'm going to work, like, 1 hour of open source today. Like, it has never been that. I only did it. The only reason I built it is because I liked it. It was not a job for me. It was something that I loved to do. And this problem was uh, so much for me that I wanted it to be fixed. Even with insomnia, like, you had Postman, that was just too much noise. I could not stand it, honestly. And it was like, then I was using insomnia. And insomnia was also, there were a lot of things that were missing. It did not have tabs. And yeah, that was the key. So I was like, okay, I'm going to build something that I want, that I love, right? I wanted to make that happen. And but I will also say this: this was there was also a some kind of a monetization angle always in my back of my mind, saying that okay, this is something that I can build. This is something can be monetizable in the future. So there was that motivation too. It was not just a hobby. There was that motivation too to make it work.
I mean, I wish I had the same commitment towards my projects, but yeah, kudos to you for that. So, right, I'd like to, dive into. I mean, we've talked a lot about the finances of these projects already. So, yeah, let's first talk about, the postman in the room. So, what do you, what do you think about an API client having a $5 billion valuation?
Yeah, to me that is something is off. The reason why it has a 5 billion valuation, like logically, is that it has a monopoly over developers, right? Everybody in the world, unsure on mute. Yeah. So everybody in the world, you can unmute yourself. Mute yourself. I thought you accidentally did it. If you- So everybody in the world, insomnia, I don't have the stats, but I would say that today, if you look at it, it's probably 95% of the developers use Postman as their API client, right? A lot of them. Then there is Insomnia. Maybe Insomnia is 10% and other tools, everything combined in, but Postman is still having, a massive monopoly. So when VCs look at it, right, they like businesses which are monopolies, which have, the hope is that Postman can take these developer audience that they have. I think for their latest stats, they told they have something around 25 million developers who use Postman. So the hope is that they can take that and monetize it in some way, right? And they also charge for the API client. I don't think the API like to me that's absurd. Like the API client itself, what they have is just not worth 5 billion. And I also don't seem to understand their angle on collaboration, right? With Bruno, we're saying there's no collaboration; it's all Git, right? They are saying that, for example, me and you, we are going to use Postman to collaborate on our API collection, just like how we use GitHub. Like that's real, right? Me and you can use GitHub to collaborate on things. I think they're thinking too much. I don't think maybe. Honestly, that's what I don't understand. As a developer, I don't need any of that. And I'm sure that in my journey, I've interacted with 100 developers in person. None of them want that. I don't understand why they are building cloud collaboration at something like GitHub, but for APIs. So yeah, I don't know. So I don't understand that. So yeah, I don't think that $5 billion is valued, but logically, because they have that user base, it makes sense for them. And this is the thing that I think many people like. I I've understood about VCs, which is that it doesn't matter what product you're building. Honestly, it actually does not matter. You build anything, you just need to show traction. You just need to show user numbers. That's it. If you're building something that has immense traction, they are going to fund you. They are going to pour the money and they say keep doing it, keep doing it. They want you to monopolize the market, and then they actually make then they bring the monetization model. It's a case with everything. It's a case with Ola, right? You have traction, you give heavy discounts, keep growing, right? Then you have the same thing with urban company. They give people, for example, hairdressers, they give them 50,000 1 lakh salaries. They're just trying to pour money and somehow trying to grab that whole market. Now, this works actually, for instance, like Facebook, right? Or for Ola, or for Zomato, or for Swiggy, right? There are certain markets which are winner take all markets, right? For there it makes sense. I'm not taking an ethical stand, or whether that is right or wrong to build a business like that. But VC money has a importance for itself, right? So yeah, so the point I'm trying to make is that anytime you have traction, whatever product you're building, you will get VC money. That's for sure.
So I have a question.
Well,
So I mean, you're talking about the. I mean, I still believe there will be a few VCs in the industry who would be sane enough to give you the freedom to work whatever way you want. I mean, no strings attached or no 10x in 2 years. So if somebody offers you, let's say, 1.5 million for 12% stake, would you still do the continue working on the project? And if they do not come and say we want board seats, we want decision, our head in the decision making, would you choose to do that?
So I would take a informed decision on that. Like, if we're getting that money, is it going to actually help us grow faster, or is that actually needed? If it is needed, and if a VC comes and says that, like we had one of the VCs who was a strategic investor, they clearly told us that, hey, we are not going to lead your round. We are a strategic partner, and we would like to see this thing, right? For Bruno, actually, it's not needed. That's the truth. We are going to build more products, uh, but it's not needed, that 1.2 million. But if it was, I would take it. But the other important thing to note is that any obligation that you take comes with a certain amount of, like, you lose a bit of your independence, right? But I get where you're coming from. They're saying that you can do whatever you want, but we just want to invest and we want to be a part of the journey, right? Uh,
So sorry to cut again. So what you're saying, what Postman is doing by having that valuation and building whatever they're building is almost of no use, because what Bruno is building is pretty much enough for people to use. And if let's say there is a funder which gives you money and you say no, so there is no need of further growth or that fast growth,
yeah,
we won't take the money. Is it what you're saying?
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
okay,
We actually don't need it.
okay.
And this is what makes that valuation even bonkers, which is that I'm not trying to be egoistic here, but even if you look at it objectively, one guy worked on it for 2 years, built it. In 5 months, a community came together and added more things and built it. If okay, if I have to quantify the community effort, let's assume that there are, like, in terms of man hours, maybe 5 full-time employees came in and built. So we can think, Bruno, that maybe it was built in a year by 10 people, right? For that, why do you need that much money? And I'll tell you what happened. Why there is a problem with VC funding is that VCs don't want you to build a profitable business. Whenever any VC comes in and put their money, they are looking for a 10x valuation, or they're looking for home runs. They don't want you to be profitable. So if you raised VC money as a founder, let's take Bruno's case, and let's say that we are making some good money and we reached a profitability. We took, let's say, $5 million or $10 million. We built a good product and we achieved profitability, right? And we say that this looks like enough. The people are there. We pay our employees. We make some things, right? But VCs don't want you to do that. What VC will tell you is that they will. This is the typical trick, or how it's done, where as a founder they will allow you to exit in a secondary sale. This happens in Series A or Series B funding, where they say that you're the founder, you give us some shares and you can exit. They'll give, let's say, 10 crore or 15 crore to the founder, right? Saying that, okay, now your life as a founder is set. You don't have to worry about the money if the company even goes under the water, right? And they say, okay, we're going to put more money, climb, do whatever you can to do it. Like, it's totally fine if the company falls down, but they want you to go all in and see what is possible, right? This actually kills many companies who could have been perfectly profitable companies, serve the community, founders made money, employees make money, could have been perfectly profitable. So I think that founders should be more careful. Like, if it's a winner all takes market, if they see themselves being a big company in the future, then it makes sense. But you have to be careful about it. And I understand sometimes where young students come from. Like, I am 33. If I was 22 and I did the same thing with Bruno, and somebody gives me, I have young hot blood, I'm gonna think that, okay, I will build more things in the future. There is immense what is it, ambition, right? So maybe as you get older you get that wisdom that, hey, you don't need that. You can build a good business even bootstrapped, right?
But I have a different question now. So, talking about the Bangalore tech scene, uh, and let's say you want to grow a team, have a team which work on Bruno for longer period, try to actually build which is required, not build, which is in my mind or your, team mind, but actually the demand. And but to fulfill the employees salary, which is quite high in the industry, we we all agree to this. How do you like hire, because there's one question in the comment section. Can you it's about unemployment right now. So my question is, but this actually answers the question which is on the chat. But since there is a huge demand in salary or CTC, whatever, uh, how would you sustain yourself in this and have a team, or you are just wanna go with the community trend? Okay, let me build myself, or if there are people in the community, let them contribute back. Is it what you're thinking, or you are excluding the fact that you won't hire? You will hire.
So I feel that as a student, if you are in tech, you should not be a. I'll come to that answer, but I'm just setting some foundation. You should not be this thing called indie hacker, right? Who's an indie hacker in the community? One person who is there, who travels, who runs the business, So you should, as a student or anybody, you should not do that. That's too risky. If you do that alone for 3 years, you can't get a job back in the industry. Nobody wants to hire you if you have not worked with a team, right? Working with a team is a very very important thing. And if, as a student, if money is your goal, the way that it looks in tech today, you might get low salary, but it's going to compound. Like the salary growth is exponential compared to any other industry. You take banks, you take lawyers, you take doctors, anybody, their salary is linear, or not even linear. It's, for some people like who work, I'm just taking so work in shops, their salary is always 25,000 per month, and maybe they become a manager after 5-10 years, they get 45,000. In tech, it's not. You just double, it just grows. This is one thing that I didn't learn in my career. I was getting paid 2.4 lakhs in Tata Elxsi yearly, per year, 20,000. At that time, I thought that I'm actually really smart. Why should I work for 20,000? I'm going to start my business and make more money, right? And at that
or
time,
or join a VC funded startups.
or join a VC funded startup, right? I wish I had that, you know, uh, wisdom that time. I did not. I was like, I'm actually worth 1 lakh per year. I should go and start my own company to make that. That was a mistake. I burnt out badly. Had I stayed on that tech trajectory, I would have achieved whatever I wanted to achieve financially. So, given all said that, starting a company is pretty brutal. It's the reason why people take funding is that it's pretty much impossible to do without that. The same problem exists. If you want to hire people, you have to pay them money. Bootstrapping is not recommended if you're taking your life savings and putting it on your business, right? It can wipe you out. It takes you to bad places. It's very hard, right? So I would say, so yes, the best thing to do is, there are opportunities to do it always as a side. Validate the market. I know it's very difficult to do moonlight, but I'm not saying like you can still do a lot of groundwork while staying in your job. You can let's say that you want to build a product for somebody, you can build it on the side. You can hire a bunch of people to build it on the side. You can use your immediate network and check with them. If they use your product, you can do some amount of, this is only if you want to do bootstrap business. So you can do that, uh, but otherwise you have to again go VC funding, which is extremely hard to do. I mean, risky as well.
Sorry, actually, I think I got lost. So my question was, if I'm a, let's say in case of Bruno, you want to have a team which is like, which a company which is more sustainable in longer run and build actual features, stories in the Bruno, rather than something which others are doing, VC funded startups are doing because of the sake of showing numbers to raise another round of funds. How would you hire people and make sure you hire the right people with the constant you have, like budget, not VC funded, money in the pocket? How would you hire in that situation? And what do you recommend to the students when they look for job? Do they ask for I want 20 lakh salary, or all the YouTube uh, videos we see, fang mang, like 50 lakh? What is your thought on that?
So two questions there. One is on the FANG side, and the other one is how do you hire people in a small firm, right? So for me, when I started Bruno, I'll give you the raw numbers. I was like, okay, I had 8 lakh in my budget, right? That's what I wanted to do. I saw that okay, it can sustain me for this year. That is what I had. Then we started getting I started selling pre-ordering the golden edition, right? And I ultimately want Bruno to be a business in terms of have not like crazy high, but a small group of people who build great products. That's the goal. So we started getting some people started pre-ordering the golden edition, and I started getting some money. I think I got around 2 lakhs in the month of January. So with that, I'm making an informed decision. So for me, the way that I look at it is I look at having a 6-month runway. Whomever I hire, I should have a 6-month runway for the business to not go belly up. Ideal recommendation is 1 year. When I mean runway, imagine nobody buys your software. You should have at least 6 months of runway, ideally 1 year, because 1 year will give you enough time to do many things. This is without any single sale coming in. So you should have that in mind and grow slowly, grow consciously. There is this myth that you need many people, but you actually don't need to. If you have a product that's growing, that's doing well, it's okay to grow slowly. You don't need I felt that. And technology like with GitHub Copilot, and you can build so many things so fast, and you can grow consciously. uh, it is, I'll tell you, it's not easy, it's very hard, but it's possible. You just have to be conscious, grounded, and be real. That's on that. The first part
Yeah.
of how to hire.
So to give an example to this, I think Zerodha is the right example where we can say that they have grown very slowly, but with a small team, and not hiring with like give luring luring the
Yes.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good example. So when Kailash started in Zerodha, right, he just hired. He didn't have a big vision that he has to build something. He just started, right? Just starting is the most important thing. He just started organically, slowly you grow it, right? Slowly you build the team, slowly you understand things. It's much better than hiring 10 people and then then figuring out what work you have to give to them, and building something that's not actually needed. So strongly recommend hiring slowly. And the important thing is you also have to be, as much as you love money, you have to be committed and love your craft that you're doing, right? Kailash is an odd case. Kailash is like crazy. He's like, he had a PhD in UK. I actually DM'd him on LinkedIn. I'm like, man, you had a PhD in UK. You leave that. You had job offers. You leave all of that and come to Kerala, and then from there you hop to Bangalore because you wanted a better internet connection. I was like, just like, why, man? Don't you love money? And as I studied him through his interview and everything, he has a different philosophy in mind. He was like, he just loves to code, and he can't be bought out, and he's going to do what he wants to do. You can't do, like, he has to be aligned. So that's a very powerful, strong
What
case.
case? Yeah. Sorry, the second question about the students who are looking for jobs. What should they look into while into the employer, the company, or the vision?
So I would say students in their early stages of their career, you need to. I would not recommend service companies. If you can get into Google level companies, Paytm, right? Some tier two, really good brand names. I would say go for it. I'm just being honest. Like the brand name on your resume is going to pay you back in the future. It's very important. If you can work with a good brand, and if you are smart enough to clear the interview and get a good brand, go work for the good brand. Second, but I would also advise students to go and work for startups, right? But when you go and work for a startup, you have to be cautious on who you choose to work with, right? There are two startups where founders are really good, really smart, intelligent, and driven, and they have a big problem that they're solving. You need to pick them. And there are startups also where people and founders are like, mujhe mera company chalna hai bas. Like they are, uh, it will. the startup that you pick is very important. Just don't go for a startup because it's a startup, because there is one person who is trying to who is trying to build something, or maybe he's trying to do a service company, right? I would not recommend to join that. Like, you need to know which startup, and especially if it's a funded startup, go work for it, because you're going to learn a ton from thing. And earlier in your life, I think you have to sacrifice. Like, it's easy to hustle more, you have more energy when you're young, than and do it in the later years. So investing early
So,
in things help.
so there was one keyword in the question I asked about the salary. I mean, people switch or immediately join another company because of the salary factor. How much it is important? You mentioned about the fact, go for brands which will give you good credit in the resume. I mean, it will actually basically make your resume good. But how much the money? I mean, should I ask, or is it like the only case thing I should look into? Because, like I mentioned, all the YouTube videos are a lot of YouTube videos are about joint fang man, 50 lakh remote jobs. What
It's
is your view on that?
That's very unrealistic. Only very few people get it. And I'll talk about salary thing from my specific instance. When I was doing another company, I was broke and I had to go and do trainings. I used to do JavaScript trainings for Oracle. At that time, I had 6 years of experience, and I was working for I had gotten an offer from a service company. I had gotten an offer for 20 lakhs per year after completing 6 years in my journey. I was going and teaching Oracle. I was doing a JavaScript training. The fresher there had 20 lakhs package. I am teaching them. The fresher there has 20 lakh package. Why? Because they come from NIT, right? I in my life thought that IITs and NITs are, like, it doesn't matter where you study from. No, it matters. You go to IIT, you go to NIT, it matters. And the way that I look at these are actually filtering the most hardworking people, the most smartest people. It's a filter. IIT is a filter. So if you make that, it has value. So that is one experience. In terms of how much to ask, I think, yeah, the Infosys guys and those guys, they pay, like 4 or 5 lakhs a year, or even less than that. Typically, any other small service startup you join as a fresher, you get somewhere between 6 and 10 lakhs, depending on, that's where I feel the industry is, 6 to 10 lakhs. And these are outliers. Remote jobs, it's outliers. Try it. I'm not saying don't try it. Try for Mang, try for Fang, but these are outliers. If you get a good job for anywhere between 6 to 10 lakhs, I would say take it. Just know that it's going to compound. The problem is people don't share their salaries, how much they used to earn. Like, I'll give you my salary so that people are here, they can understand. In the last company that I worked at, I was getting 44 lakhs per year. I have 10 years experience, 44 lakhs per year, including everything, with 10 years. And I could have potentially gone and gotten 70 lakhs or something. Uh, I was always this guy where I used to do some side hustles, some things. So I was not fully ambitious on my career. I mean, I used to be very transparent with my employers, saying that, guys, I like here, but I need some freedom. I do some things outside, and they were fine with it. So I used to stay, despite not the salary that my skill set, or my what I bring to the table would demand. So I would say maybe I would have gotten 70. So I think it's very important to know that the exponential curve is there. Nobody tells you this. 1 year, 2 year, maybe you don't even, at 2 years also you're getting this, but as you go 3, 4, and if you really work hard, if you bring skills, there are strong demand for good people. You're going to get paid really high, but you have to persevere through that, initial 3, 4 years and you build your skill set, and you're going to get paid well.
I think I have my answers. Thank you.
Cool.
Right. So, I mean, just to go back on the discussion we were having regarding valuations, right? I think this is a fairly recent trend for tech founders to just dilute their company to like crazy extents just to get that valuation in. And then, I mean, more than half of the time I see that the results are not very favorable. I mean, Insomnia got acquired. So, and as you mentioned, there are VCs who are very interested to, fund this. And that is, I'm assuming these 10 VCs are those who reached out to you and not the other way around, right? So, I mean, if you were to start looking for funding, that number could be 100 VCs. So, why do you choose to, stay on this bootstrap path as of what you've already answered, but I'm assuming it's very difficult to, continuously reject that notion of I could be getting this amount of money, but still, you choose to stay bootstrapped as a company.
There were two reasons. One reason is that I do have a plan on making money from this, right? I do have an ulterior motive, but I don't have a number like 100 crores or even 20. Like I don't have a. I have a small thing. I want to have a house, some money in the bank that can counter a medical emergency. That's
Hmm.
all. I want a house to live in. I want some money in the bank so that if somebody falls sick and they need a medical problem, I have funds to do that. That's all that I need. I don't need more. So there is this definition of enough for me that I need to make, and that's not a big number. So I don't need to go that super ambitious and try to make like lose whatever I already have in the hope of something like if I could make 2 crores in Bruno, I don't want to give it up for the possibility of making 200 crores. No, 2 crores is fine. I'll be happy with
So,
this.
what is
That's
that
that's
number
one.
for,
So I
say,
would
a
say for me,
30-year-old person
long
who's
term, I
living in
think,
Bangalore with a family?
yeah. For
What
that
would be
person,
the ideal ballpark?
I would say for me that number would be 5 CR to get there. It's a very big number, but see, the goal of this number is not to retire. No, I will continue coding no matter what. But like there is a difference when you go to a job knowing that I can quit anytime I want, but I want to do this because I really want to do this. I'm not going this for a paycheck. Most people in the industry go for a paycheck. They have obligations, they have EMIs, they have kids, so many things, and they really go for that. So your goal should be to build a corpus which will give you the flexibility to switch companies, to take a break in between if you want. So money for that, not to retire, right? Now, so that's the reason I bootstrap. I know that I can make, secure my financial freedom. I feel confident on that. The second reason is the way that the API client ecosystem has done for the last 10 years. eh, like you had Postman, and if you look at every other API client, they've all tried to be open source versions of Postman. The moment they get GitHub stars, they go and get the VC funding, and it's the same story on repeat. So it's like with Bruno, we actually have doing something that nobody else in those that ecosystem is doing. We have innovated so much. There's so much into the table. We could get VC funding, but I'm like I want to make sure that this project is not should be open source eventually everything, as well as I want to have control over this journey, this particular project. I don't want to tell my ask permission from anybody telling that which direction should I take the project, right? And I actually posted this question on FOSS United. I remember clearly two answers from Rushabh and Kailash. Both were like, bootstrap, keep your independence. That is priceless, right? As much as possible, bootstrap, right? They didn't say don't raise funds, but they told me that bootstrap, right? And as much as possible, if you can, do that, right? And it gives you that freedom. So with Bruno, I can take the call on how much it should be priced at entirely, right? That freedom you lose anytime you bring in a VC. You're like, or anytime you have to go with for any important decision, you have to take their opinion too. So freedom was another thing. Like I would look at like even philosophically in your life, you're here for a very short time. I really want to do what I want to do. I don't want to. It's not coming from a thing that I won't listen to you. I will listen. I may be wrong, but I want to have that freedom to take the decisions that I feel are right. Right. That was another reason.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah. So, I mean, there are quite a few, good number of projects that have been doing well reasonably in terms of finances as well. So, what would be, a few OSS projects that you particularly like and, the revenue models behind them? It could be funding, it could be grants, donations, just some
Um,
examples.
it's actually very hard to find those. What I'm trying to say is that I would look at like bootstrapped open source is very difficult. There are a lot of VC funded open source, right? But bootstrapped open source is very difficult. VC funded, I think GitLab was a great success story. It was an anomaly, I would say. It's not easy to build a company like GitHub. Go on to IPO. So they do a lot of they've been pretty successful. I see this new editor, which is called Zed. They are VC
Z.
funded, but they are taking they're trying to take a stab at giving an editor away for free and hopefully charge something in the future. I think from India we have Chatwood. They're doing something, trying to open source things. So, but all of these companies, yeah, it's actually very hard to monetize an open source project, right? And we have these companies which are commercial open source, where they actually offer a commercial, they'll have a limited set of features in their open source edition. For more things they want to pay, and I think it's better than nothing. It's better than completely being closed. At least partially being open is a much better thing to have. And in terms of open source, I feel there is another aspect to the open source part, which is that freedom. What I mean by freedom is, um, as a community, as people in the world, right? We are in many ways chained because of our constitution, right? We are, when I mean chained by our constitutions, we all agree to follow certain laws, right? We have certain banks, we have certain payment gateways, they all have control over us, right? All payment gateway in India can decide and tell that we are not going to do business with Bruno, I'm going to be out. And so we need tools which empower every single, this is not actually coming me trying to be a kind of a visionary or something. And I've never been into open source since the last 6 months. Like, it's only recently that I've been working. And this is what I've observed and I've seen. Okay, what's the actual point of this? What's the benefit of being something open source? Is that freedom, meaning like I can run today MySQL. I can start a business MySQL. I can put a Linux distribution, right? I can. There are so many things that are free that empower every single citizen, and a government can't do nothing about it. Like, I can host Linux. Unless there is a censorship or something like that, we can't. Similarly, with Bruno, like, I don't even control it. It's an open source project. If the community does not believe in what I stand for and what the company stands for, they can fork Bruno, right?
Correct.
That freedom, that's key. That they are not dependent on some company, right? That a company will not say them, okay, you're out. Like, I cannot do that to anybody in Bruno, right? So we need more and more free and not free. Free isn't freedom. More open source projects which will empower, every single person. I think that's my learning, at least, in the last 6 months, when I've looked at what's the point of open source, what's the key thing that, why more companies should do open source.
And I mean, Insomnia followed that path of VC funding, and they eventually got acquired by Kong. And now, at some point, I think this is also the time when Bruno sort of gained that popularity. The primary reason was Insomnia sort of took user data hostage, and that really, just, I mean, that was kind of, they dug their grave there and then.
Yeah, it's insane to say that you need to give me your email address to use
Right.
my tool, right? Like, you can tell that to business folks, but you tell it to developers, no, they like, you can't. You can't. They're gonna say that we're gonna build our own tool, right? So luckily, we were in a position where we had all our hard work. At that point, it was just me. Most of my hard work for 2 years was ready for that prime time. That the tool was out there. I was begging people to look at it. Nobody looked at it, and this is another reason. The thing with network effect, right? I had Bruno, the same product, in March. It was already ready. It had all
Right.
the features, but nobody would even look at it. I even used to go and speak to people in FOSS United, scream at them, guys, this is actually better. People are like, man, good, Anoop, you have a great project, continue with it. I already, the habit that gets formed with the network effect, right, with Postman and Insomnia, people are like, I already have what I want here. Why do I need you? Right? So network effects are the hardest to build, hardest to beat. And this is the key reason why VCs will pour money whenever there is a traction, because
Right.
traction will eventually lead to a network effect. Once you have a network effect, you can monetize it, and you can think about monetization later. So as long as your product is growing, not product, your user numbers are growing. Yeah.
So, I mean, apart from that, what would you say are, the primary reasons for this very recent influx of users?
So the way I look at, so Postman and Insomnia in this month have in last year have made Postman has made this move that they are not going to support anything online, anything.
Mm,
They made
right.
that stance, and they told that everything will be saved in our cloud. I don't know why they took that stance. Maybe for whatever reason, from a business standpoint. So people were not happy with it. Many banks were not happy with it. They can't unless you buy a very costly plan from Postman, right? And their pricing is actually too pricey. It's like $49 per user per month. 49. It's just because they are a monopoly, they can charge whatever they want, right? So Postman did that. That was one reason. Then Insomnia came and told that you need to give your email, and you will only they started making. So this is also so people are like, no, we need to look for a different tool. So a lot of people who are not happy with Postman come to Insomnia, and everybody got pissed off. They're like, guys, how often should we keep switching tools? Can somebody make a tool that won't do this? So to me, when I thought about VC funding, and when I've had my dilemmas, because when you have money in front of you, how do so the way that I thought about it is that, um, what would Anoop tell me if I was a third person and if Bruno has this immense success? What would that Anoop tell me? Or what would I tell to that creator of Bruno? Right? I would tell that creator this, that, hey man, you got something good going. It's a great tool. Just keep it the way it is. You want money, we will give you money. But don't make us go through that one more ask looking for an alternative, right? And I knew that because Insomnia did this for 7 years. They were open source for 7 years. They're still open source. But after 7 years, because it is under Kong, and they, I think, are planning to go to IPO, and they want to show a lot of users, they force people to, sign in. They want to show that we have so many developers in our platform, right? So what I'm trying to say here is that even if I take VC money now, how do I guarantee that I won't do it after 7 years?
Right.
The only way that I can guarantee it is by having complete independence over this project, right? So I decided that, okay, first we're going to keep this open, and we will figure out a way to make money. And even if so I didn't want to go that path again. And honestly, if somebody comes to me and says me that we're going to acquire you for $1 million, if they put 10 crores on the table, the answer is no. I might cry, but the answer is no. It's not. We are not going to sell it. No. I've had a struggle with as a developer looking for a good API client, and we have something good going, and I don't want to sabotage it. And we'll make money. We may not make money also. That's also fine, but we're not going to sell it. Um,
Right. So, I think all of the other most of the other API clients right now, almost everyone has Cloud Sync enabled, right?
yeah.
So, do you think that Bruno is going to replace all of that, or is there kind of space for like multiple players? For example, if you consider, hopscotch, it is a valid use case, right? For somebody who doesn't do this really frequently, it's very convenient for them to open a new tab in a browser, test their APIs, and get done with it. So, I mean, the question is, do you think that Bruno is going to be like the only de facto model, or there can be multiple, players in this market, if I can say that?
Okay. So in terms of prediction, I think if I have to pick a number, today 90% of the world uses Postman.
Right.
Maybe 5% of the world uses Insomnia, and the remaining 5% is used by Bruno, Hopscotch, HTTPI, every other player, right? This is the case today.
Right.
In 2 years, that equation will get flipped. That's my prediction. We will be the 90%. Bruno will be the 90%. Uh, that will happen. I'll come to your question on whether there is a space for cloud sync tools.
Right.
So I would like to take the analogy of CVS, centralized version control. Before 2010, there was when you didn't have Git. Git came in 2005. It got popularized in 2008. But before this, there was a tool called Tortoise SVN. There was a CVS. There was Perforce. All of these were centralized version control systems. So if you want to download your code, you had to clone it from there. And if you wanted to create branches, anytime you create a branch, it's getting created on a centralized system. Meaning that if I and you clone Bruno on our systems, we can create any number of branches, whatever we wish. It's all decentralized. In the past, in 2010 and before, the version control systems were centralized. Source code version control. Git came in and made it decentralized, right? Everybody has their own copy. This is what I feel the future looks like, which is that Postman, Hopscotch, and every other thing, their model of collaboration is a centralized system, is a centralized server. Bruno is doing the same thing that Git did to SVS. Bruno is doing the
Right.
same thing to centralized collection control, right? So Bruno will allow you to use Git, which you already do for source code control. So I see in 2 years, the developer population, all developers, and I mean all majority of them, will move to Bruno, or they will move to any other system which will allow file-based access. So any API client, if they implement file-based access, that will eventually happen. I'm betting that, I'm not saying that there is a chance that Bruno, we will be the de facto client in 2 years, but I am 100% confident that in 2 years, file-based systems will win. File-based systems will win. Yeah. So there is a place. I think not everybody is a techie. There are product managers. There are a group of people who actually don't want to download, clone, get, and do a bunch of things. They would rather have a tool that open up, and they do, there is a centralized thing. There is a space for that. I'm not saying there is not a space for that. And but for developers, when I mean developer, if you write JavaScript, if you write Rust, C, whatever, a developer, you will always use a file-based system like Bruno or something else. Yeah.
Makes sense. And I mean, really excited to see how this turns out, and hope your prediction comes true.
Yeah.
So, as you mentioned, VCs really look for that traction or network effect, and so I think one of the ways to do that is GitHub stars, right? So I mean, I see this a lot that all these CXOs they pitch their number of GitHub stars to potential VCs to get funded, and also we have seen this that a lot of companies actually run campaigns and giveaways for you to for people
Yeah.
to start their projects, right? So, I mean,
Yeah.
I sort of see it as a vanity metric at this point. But do you personally, as somebody who's recently seen that spike in popularity, do you see this as, I mean, what value do you give to these stars?
Um, so I actually don't see that as a. Uh, to me, it's. I see that as a source of not appreciation, a source of like how a person is rich, right? They see like you base them on the money they make, the currency, right? I know that GitHub stars can be gamed. You can buy a lot of GitHub stars and make you can put things in the thing that go star a repository and a bunch of things, but it gives me a sense of satisfaction or a sense of not satisfaction, a sense of pride
Right,
that okay, I in my career had a GitHub project which is today at 12K stars, right? That's a very proud, just being honest, it's a very proud thing for me to have built that. And I see that as a way of community saying that I like this project, has potential, right? Till date we have never done any brand collaboration or anything that will promote that GitHub stars. Everything has been fully organic. So, and you know that even in developers, right? Not all developers who go to a project star it, right? Many of us use many open source projects. We don't go and star everything. So when you say that
right.
12,000 people have starred your GitHub repo, which means that you can extrapolate it like maybe 10 times, maybe it has impacted that many developers, right? So yeah, I don't see that as a vanity metric, but I don't believe in like gaming it as kind of it doesn't
I mean,
it
for a
actually doesn't.
bootstrapped project, probably not. But when you see it as a model that, the CXOs, as I mentioned, are relying on to get funding or whatever, at some point you need to stop giving that much attention or value to it, I assume.
Yeah,
Or is
I
it
actually
just
don't. Yeah, I don't look at the stars anymore. I'm happy that it keeps growing. I look at it very often. But look, the other thing about business is right. Um, it has to most successful businesses, right? You don't go build a business the way to look at it is you have to build a product and make users happy, and everything else is side. VCs investing you is a side effect of it. GitHub stars growing is a side effect of it. So if you're starting a business, your focus should be just on improving the core product and serve your customers. That's it. The rest, money, everything, you have to have a business plan. But what I'm trying to say is that if you're a founder and if you're trying to game your GitHub stars, and if you're, then you got it wrong. You're spending your energy, you're wasting your energy, right? Yeah. But
I'm
again,
yeah.
I was just
I'm
saying
not sure
that
if you see that. Go on. Sorry. Sorry.
I'm not dissing or saying that VC funded companies are bad or anything, but it has, like, I go back this to Kailash, right? I've seen, like, it has to be rooted in common sense. You have to be rooted in common sense. Does this business need VC money, right? And if you're taking VC money, do you understand the perils of it, or the what are the advantages and the disadvantages? Have you worked in a VC? Like, people who want to start a company, I would recommend go and work for a company who is VC funded to learn what it takes. It takes a lot, right? And with VC funded startups, you don't get to do this work-life balance thing, or take a stand on very hard stand on things. If you go working for a VC funded startup, you're going to likely be working late into the night, and everybody is going to keep doing that. It has its downside. So you should I'm just pointing that it should be rooted in common sense, and you should know the pros and cons before taking VC money.
Makes sense. Yeah. So again, I already know the answer, but I mean, it would be great if you share the story of the version 1.0.0 with the audience, because it was a really interesting story how you wanted to spend more time on it, but then the community just sort of just yeah, go on.
Yeah. So what happened was, I was trying to do. I'll kind of briefly tell the story there. So I was kind of doing Bruno, and in September 30th is when Insomnia announced his decision, and from there it went crazy. The growth was happening, and I then was furiously working every night fixing bugs. I worked the hardest in October and November to fix, because so many people were coming in and asking so many things. Like, it's crazy. If you go and look at GitHub PR of Bruno, there are 117 PRs. I have to merge. I've already merged around 400 of them, or 350, 300 plus of them, and there's still so many more. So there's been massive contributions into the project. So I was trying to fix all of them, and all of a sudden, somebody from FOSS United called me and say that, hey, your project is doing good. Would you want to come and, like, we'd like to support you. Do you want to come and give a presentation? I was like, okay, that's good. And I told that yes, I'll come. I'm very honored to come there. And also, FOSS United was very kind enough to offer us a stand in India FOSS 3.0. So while I was preparing for that, I actually wanted to do a lot more features. We were building and building, but we had this comment from the community telling that, hey, we like Bruno in our company, but that 0 dot version bothers us a bit, because many people in our company see that it's not stable whenever you have the point some version, right?
Yes.
So that's when I decided that, okay, I told them that, okay, I want to build a lot more. I don't feel we should call this 1.0. So in my opinion, 1.0 was something that is fully featured, right? But the community came and told me that, why don't you take that and do it as 2.0, right? We already have 1.0, right? We already have everything that we need. We don't need anything more. So that's another thing that has been with open source. There are a lot of people in Bruno who used Bruno's version in October and are already happy with it. They don't need anything more. We have done so much in the last 3-4 months, and they don't need anything of that. So, but there are also people who are waiting for a lot of features to come in. So not everybody needs everything. That's another key thing. There are a few people who only need that thing, and they're just happy with that. So they told me that, why don't, and it made sense to me. That I was like, okay, it makes sense, and I decided to cut a version. And yeah, with this, you have to be a bit theatrical. I launched 1.0.0 in India first, on the podium. So it was a very happy, nice moment to launch 1.0.0 on the stage, push the tag on the stage. Yeah, so that's how it came to be, and we are kind of building towards 2.0.0. We are building more features, an entirely new language itself called Bru Markup Language. Um, yeah, so it's also one other thing about open source is you have to be shamelessly vocal
Right.
and loud. It's hard to get attention. Maybe now we have the attention, but there was a time when there was no attention. And if I had stayed in a cocoon and not talk about my project, not try to engage in discussions, it would have always remained. I would have always remained an anonymous project, right? You need to go. You need to talk to people, go to conferences, meet people, talk about it, and sometimes use tactics. Like we use postman as a villain in some of the messaging in the initial days. Now I don't have to use that. Now I actually don't have to use any company as a that we are going against them or thing. Now we are on our own. But when you are nobody, right, you have to say that. You don't say that Bruno is good, you say postman is not good. And that's how you then people were like, why are you saying postman is not good? Then they'll come to you, talk to you. So yeah, like, and there are these sometimes these unrealistic stories of somebody posts something on Hacker News and it got viral, and you
Yeah.
think that you did some open source project and you went and posted it, and not a soul came and looked for it, and you're like, why is the world unfair to me? The truth is that the world is unfair to 99.99% of the people. It's just sheer luck that something goes viral. So the only way that you guys like you can keep at it is find something that you're absolutely passionate about, that is solving your own problem. Because if it was not, then you will quit. But if it's solving your own problem, you may take a 1 or 2 month break, but then you will again come back at it because it's solving your problem.
Right.
And yeah, that has been my experience with doing that for 2 years in almost near anonymity. Nobody even noticing it for 2 years.
So, I mean, a lot of techies are going to be watching this. So, I figure we may have derailed a bit into the finances a lot. But just to, go back on the project. So, what is the tech stack behind Bruno?
So we are JavaScript fans.
Right.
We love JavaScript. We love Brendan Ike for creating JavaScript. There is a lot of hate that Brendan gets, JavaScript gets in the community. People mock it by saying, that something doesn't work. Space plus something is something. He developed it for 10 years. I mean, in 10 days. There's a lot of people mock it. But for me, I proudly say that I love JavaScript. And our entire stack is on JavaScript. We use React, which is a front end framework. We use Electron, which is a JavaScript project. And the backend, what is Electron? Electron is basically Chromium browser plus Node.js, right? What is Chromium? Chromium is nothing but a web browser with a V8 engine, which is a JavaScript runtime. So we use basically Electron, Node, and React, and our entire stack is in JavaScript. So this is one of the benefits that you like for us. A lot of people in the community know JavaScript, so it's very easy for them to contribute. um, yeah, and we have enjoyed that we only have to learn one language. And to me, sometimes engineers, especially students, get very hung up on which framework, which language to use, TypeScript or JavaScript. The truth is nobody cares. Your users don't care. People who use Bruno don't care if it's written in Rust or in JavaScript or anything. They just care that the tool works. This is the hardest for
Yeah.
juniors in the industry to get used to when they go to a company. They will go to a company and say that just because they cannot React a 2-year-old Angular JS code base, they'll tell their manager that we're going to rewrite this in React and it's going to be 10 times faster, and this will give us more, we're going to do that. So as an engineer, your job is not to build the coolest code. You have to be product oriented. When I mean, you have to really think backwards from the customer, right? You have to use the technologies, but the right technologies, right? And this wisdom comes, it's very hard for young students to have this wisdom, but it comes later when you realize that rewriting is not a good solution. Even if that old code that exists in the company is written in some obscure old framework, that thing makes money, that is paying our salaries, and we have to figure out how to maintain that cleanly. Yes, you migrate it, but that decision should not be based on what is shiny and what is new in the industry. It should be based on, okay, what does my team know better? Do we know PHP better, or do we know Rust better? A not so good team will say that we're going to pick Rust, and they will waste time on it. But if your team already knows PHP or Ruby or JavaScript, that's all that matters, unless you are in Google or Facebook. Because unless you're in that level where your technology choices matter that much, I think for most of the people, you just pick what you're comfortable with, what your team is most comfortable with. And if you're building a company or anything, build a product that people love, that people use. Technology, don't obsess about technology too much. Yeah.
Right. That's really insightful. So, I mean, going forward, just to continue on that, I'd like you to talk about Brulang, Bru, and there's a whole GitHub discussion, right, on why you chose to create a domain-specific language. So, if you could shed some light on that very briefly.
Sure. So one of the things that was problematic was whenever you take Bruno saves everything as files, right? So whatever you see in Bruno, the entire request needs to be ultimately saved as a file, and it should be, we could not use JSON because there are multi-line things that we might need to save in Bruno, a JSON body or a text body. But if I save it in the JSON format, it does not support new lines. So we could not use JSON. So, but we had to save it in a manner that is human readable by anybody who can, who is raising a PR, right? So we couldn't use JSON. There was YAML, and YAML, I basically see that as a big indentation hell. And as well as the other thing with YAML was that uh, it if you think about how do you add new lines in YAML, right? There are 9 different ways in YAML to represent a new line. And that was confusing as hell to me. And we needed this concept of annotations. I think if you go to the brulang.org, brulang.org, there we talk about this new thing called annotations, which actually does not exist in any markup language out there. So we needed that very much, the power of annotations. Um, so when I decided to do Bruno 2 years back, I was using some kind of a format. I just wanted to make it readable, and I iterated over that format many times, but I just wanted to make it readable. But now Bruno has grown so much. Almost last month we had 35,000 people, 35,000 developers who use Bruno. Now that language has now shown, not the language, the format that we had has shown its age, and we cannot do new lines, and we are struggling a bit with to implement some things. So I decided that okay, we need a standard language, and that's how Brulang, official standard Brulang, got born. When I worked with the community, I told that these are the things that we wanted, and the community has been super helpful. They gave me feedback. In fact, one of the community members co-authored the spec with us. His name is Austin. So we got on a call. So this is another benefit of open source is you get to meet people who are smarter than you actually, and you get to interact and learn with them. So Austin came along and he helped me. We had a discussion. We helped clean the spec a bit. He helped me write the spec. So the spec is out there. It's a language, markup language, which has explicit support for annotations and how to do new lines in just one simple way. Um, and sometimes the other thing about the thing that I've struggled with open source is that when you are doing it like this, very transparently, uh, you hear a lot of opinions. People, in terms of pricing the product, in terms of even the language design itself, you will hear a lot of different opinions, right? People have varied opinions, but you won't be able to satisfy everybody, right? You have to make an informed choice, and you have to take, and I struggle with something like I have to say sometimes no to people, because I can only make one decision. I cannot please make a decision that satisfies everybody. It doesn't often that much, but sometimes I do have to disagree with people, right? And that is a small challenging part of it. as an open source maintainer, when you don't, maybe you don't like something in the PR, you want it changed. That has actually never happened. But I'm just saying, since Bruno is largely a community-driven effort, and less corporate, more community, uh, there is a challenge that I go through to make sure that we don't hurt anybody, or we don't push away somebody. Uh, we have to make decisions, but we have to be do it well, and not push away someone.
Right. So, another question related to the technical side of the project. So, how are you handling migrations right now? And follow-up question. I mean, I'm assuming most of the users migrating right now are from Postman or Insomnia, but there are, say, n different clients. So, how do you prioritize building these migration systems?
So in the beginning of the project, we did not have any migration at all. We just built a proper tool, but over time it kind of grew organically. Like somebody came and told that they want postman migration support. So I did postman migration support as a first in the very early days of the career, Bruno. And the insomnia migration, right? I participated in the FOSS 3.0 hack that was organized last year by FOSS United. So I participated in the event, and I built a insomnia migration in that 2 days. So I did insomnia migration, and then people wanted to support Open API specification, right? That was entirely built by the community, right? So once the question, so we already have migrations for Postman, Insomnia, and Hopscotch. Not Hopscotch. Hopscotch, somebody wants to build it, but for Open API spec. So we already have all of them existing, and the benefits of being an open source project is that people actually contribute and fix most of the issues. That's the another surprising thing that to me that occurred. That when I was lead in my company, I used to probably review 2 PRs or 1 PR per day. That was my as a technical lead in a big company. I used to review 1 or 2 PRs. In Bruno, I had to review 5 PRs every day. I was like, I had a team working for me. So that's another thing of open source. I'm just connecting, the migration stuff. People contribute a lot. People want to make the project successful, and not every project will be like this. Like for example, if I take Chatbot, right? They're a chat application. They're used by businesses. I would not imagine the same level of passion and people coming and contributing to Chatbot as much as they would do for Bruno. The reason is it's a developer tool. So the lesson for me, or my message here would be that anytime you're building a developer tool, any developer tool, be it an editor, be it a terminal, anything that you as a developer uses, a library, a framework, you got to open source it. Because
Right.
if you open source it, the community will help you to grow it. And not just that, you don't need product managers anymore in this setup. A product manager is somebody who has to study the market, decide what features to build, what migrations to support, and come back with competitor analysis and everything, right? In this model, the users actually come back, right? They come and shout. They shout today in PRs like, Anup, when is this going to get merged? Or I am waiting for this feature for so long. There are like our OAuth2, which has been on my back for almost 2 months. There are almost 50 upvotes for that GitHub issue, right?
Right.
So doing open source also helps you, for developer tools, has this immense benefit that you are building the right tool. You're building it for somebody who needs it instead of the guesswork that you do in closed source stuff. I think I'm just when I talk about an answer, you ask me a question, I tell an answer, but then I connect with it with something else. Yeah, I'm just saying I see myself doing that a lot in this talk.
So we just mentioned open source. So this is FOSS 101. So for the last final few questions, we'd like to discuss the FOSS aspect of Bruno, and I guess the most required question right now is how can people contribute to Bruno?
So we have if you go to GitHub, Bruno's GitHub repository, you can just type Bruno and GitHub, and you will get that link. there is a contributing.md document. In
Right.
that document, it is listed how to set this whole thing up. It's a very simple set of steps. You have to open two terminals, do npm install, and just run a couple of commands, and you have Bruno up and running. I'm just talking about the setup. Don't worry that the setup is something complex that you need a video tutorial to do it. No, there are hundreds of contributors who have already done this. It's just a very simple setup. You can bring up Bruno on your system very easily. Okay, that's the first thing. Now, talking about contributing to Bruno, is you can go through our issues in GitHub. There are 600 issues, I think, close to 600 issues.
And so, how many would you describe as good first issues for beginners to pick up?
Maybe it's I don't know, maybe 100, 150 of them would be there, good first issues that we. So again, due to the nature of our bootstrap business, we don't have budget to hire a dedicated developer experience, so I still do all the. So I've swamped with many things, so we haven't done a fantastic job when it comes to labeling the issues, but you go through the issues and you can find some, the best thing to do with Bruno sometimes is also not download Bruno and just try to fix an issue. Use Bruno in your projects. That would be the first thing. And use Bruno in your tool, in your workflow. And then you would see that you need something is not missing. Something is missing in that. That is a good way to contribute. Or you can go through GitHub issues and see what makes something that you can pick up, right? But we have not done a good job in labeling good first issues. That is something that we should do. Hopefully, after soon we can do that by after clearing up a bunch of PRs that we already have. So the other reason that we don't participate in, not try to participate in GSOC or any other thing, is because we already are swamped with PRs. We have to first clear this PR backlog that we have before we can do something that where we can mentor a lot of developers in a program, right? Um,
Right. Makes sense. So again, this is a question from our students section. So, do you at some point? I mean, Bruno is expanding, and you are also growing as an organization. So, do you plan to at some point, participate in these open source incentivization programs, GSOC or something like that, for students to, think about the project?
yes. Yep. I can't commit on a date. It's not going to be definitely not going to be in the next 3 months. Maybe after that, once we have some stability, once we have some, as a business, we are have some stability, not just business, project wise. Also, it's very chaotic right now. There is so much influx, so much demand that we're just struggling to keep up. Struggling to keep up with the PRs. So we have to. Hopefully, will get into some good place within 2 months, and then we look forward to do more. Uh,
But you do plan to, in any way, sort of maybe incentivize contributors,
yeah. Yes.
right? So, I'd also like to. We are running out of time. I mean, we have 40 minutes past what we decided. But so, just to what do you think about the future of Bruno? So, I mean, right now the popularity or whatever influx is there, it's because of people migrating from another client. But at some point, I assume this growth will plateau down. So,
Yes.
how do we go forward from there? Do you have other projects planned in the long term Bruno ecosystem?
Yes. So I see Bruno being. My goal is to have it feature complete by June. Everything that we want will be done by
June of
June.
this year,
June of this year. That's the goal.
right?
Maybe it may extend to maybe this December of this year. Maybe okay, between June and December, it's going to get likely like everything that we want in a developer tool. Any developer needs. We may not fulfill every single requirement in the world.
Right.
Maybe Postman or maybe other tools may be the right fit for them. But for a large group of people, that 90% population of developers, right? Whatever they need will be already here within June, worst case December. We'll be done with it. And I've always also told that I don't see Bruno as a indie hacker project where I and two people are working on it, because I want to make sure that this is sustainable. Not sustain when I mean sustainability, not in terms of money, but also in terms of longevity of the project, right? The way this was another reason why I chose open source. I knew that I was the only guy who was going to be working on it for a long time. And if I had kept this project closed, if something happens to me, that project, like, people don't have the source for it. So that was a key reason for me to do open source, thinking that, okay, if something happens to me, the project is out there, somebody can carry it forward, right? That was one key reason that I chose open source. Now coming back to the long-term plan, so there is a new product that we are going to be building for a larger set of customers, like big companies. It's called
Right.
Skyview. It's another long. These Bruno and Skyview. These are the two problems that I've had in my career for 10 years in my journey. I felt that these two problems need to be solved. I'll speak about Skyview and maybe later, so later sometime else. But it's basically a developer portal for big companies to use. So we are going to be working on that. That's going to be a closed source project because we're going to be building it for mid and large enterprises. So I see Bruno's growth. I don't see ourselves growing like more than 5 people this year, maybe 10 people next year. So we would likely maintain a very small team.
Okay.
And as a company, our goal is, our identity is basically, uh, like, I've been thinking about this. Like, what is our identity as a company? What does Bruno stand for, right? Uh, we are not trying to be a big company. We are trying to form a company where a group of people can come in and build great software, right? Build useful software, efficient software for, and bring efficiency into the world. Or just people who love building software. So it's going to be a small company. And for us, the other aspect of being with Bruno, right? We have a brand that is getting built, right? As this grows, even though if Bruno itself might not be a big success in terms of money, right? As a company, we have built a big brand, right? Which means that using this brand, if I go with a second product, Skyview, right? There are so many people who have reached out to me, like inbound. Like, I have on the list, on my, like, 4 people in VP level folks have contacted me on mail saying that, hey, we love Bruno, we want to support you, how do we do that, right? Or they want to use it in their organizations, how do we, like, what can we make? So with Bruno, that visibility has come in, and this,
Right.
we are growing our network, which means that when we come out with a new product, whether that product is successful or not is a secondary, but it gives us a distribution channel to promote this product and see if this can work, right? So this is another reason where when VCs come in with Bruno, right? I could have easily told VCs, this is the game plan, that we're going to take Bruno, we're going to make it completely open source, we are going to completely leave it free, and we'll build something else, and Bruno will be like a distribution channel for that, right? It's actually a good business strategy, and VCs would have been okay with that. But my worry was that if I did that and Bruno is completely free, I took a bet, I took VC money, I built a second product, this second product failed, then investors will come and say me that, okay, your second product failed, why don't you go and charge for Bruno? And I was like, I don't want to be in that situation.
Right.
So that's why I'm sure that Bruno itself will make us, sustainable and financially, not like extreme money, but money, enough money to buy a house and to have some money in the bank for a medical emergency. Bruno can, for me as a creator, it can give me that, and everything else is a bonus. The Skyview product, we're gonna build it. The impact, uh, the tiny tidbit of fame that I have, tiny tidbit of it, that's a bonus. So
So, do you want to talk about the organizations or any sponsors so far that have supported Bruno? I think.
yes, I want to talk about that. Thank you for bringing that up. So I'm so glad and so thankful to Samagata Foundation. They actually, I cannot name that person because that person told me that he would probably prefer to be unnamed. He's a very popular person.
Right.
I reached out to him, and he was like, "Okay, Anoop, I'll help you connect with some foundation here." I got the funds, and I told him that, "Man, I'm going to tell you that you helped us." Right? He was like, "Don't mention my name." It's like, okay. So Samagata, like, I didn't reach out to Samagata. So this is another thing. If you put yourself out, if you put your intentions out transparently, right? Even your intentions about money, it's totally fine to say that I love money, I want to make money. But
Right.
authenticity is missing in this world. So if you put authentically yourself out who you are, there people are more than happy to help you. So one person, I can't name him, he helped us get to Samagata. And Samagata, I can name the directors there. Roshni, she was in touch with us. So they helped us fund 5 lakhs with Bruno. Then there was a lot of people have funded Bruno in GitHub sponsors. I would like to
Yes.
call out some special people. There was one person, an anonymous funding that came for $300. I know who he is, but it was an anonymous funding in the GitHub sponsor. They sponsored $300, and that was 25,000 rupees. That was cool. There is this person. There is our own Nikhil Kotari. He's the Raven. They're doing an open source Slack. So Raven, they love our product. They sponsored $1,000. They gave us, which accounts to almost close to 85,000 rupees. They didn't even ask for some kind of a sponsorship badge or anything. They just sent us that money. So I really want to thank them for their support. And two contributors in Bruno have been very helpful, especially Martin and Timon. Those two have been helping us. And I also want to call out one special person. His name is David Kumber. He has been one of our early supporters in Bruno, even before anybody noticed it. He's a person who set up the contributing guideline for Bruno because he wanted to set it up on his system. And and the other thing is that a lot of people have bought Bruno's golden edition, pre-ordered it for $9, right? That has given me the confidence to improve, hire more people to improve the product. So in January we sold around 200 plus golden edition pre-orders. So I'm thankful to everybody who is supporting the project.
So yeah, folks, if anyone watching actively uses Bruno or it's used in your organization, you can donate to Bruno via GitHub, or you can purchase the golden edition. I think the pre-registrations are going on right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll put in a link somewhere here. Right. So this is the final section. Couple of questions. I like to call it "We don't talk about Bruno." So, so yeah, we've seen your growth. I mean, recently. But what kept you going when there were no rewards or incentives to keep doing this?
Um, it was two things. One, it was just solving your own problem. That is one. The second thing is I love this. I get high on this actually. That's the truth, not joking. So you cannot like there was this night that I released this Git version of it. Like I took there was March where I was like, okay, no more server. We're gonna go all on Git, and I made the code base and I released it. Such euphoria, in my mind. It was equivalent to getting a very big high. So I actually get high of working on software. That is a key. That's a root. The root is that I actually love this, love doing this, and I would do this even for free. That's the first thing. The second thing that kept me going, despite during bad times, not bad times, during times when nobody was even looking, was that I was just solving my own problem. And I was like, I'm going because I was fed up with something out there, and I wanted to build. So the other thing is, for this is a message for students, is that this is I'm just echoing what Kailash Nadh said in one of the things. Like if you want to get into open source and you are doing this mistake of, okay, what is my problem that I want to solve? Okay, Anoop says that we should solve our own problem. So what is my problem to solve, right? They start to look for a problem, which is wrong. Don't look for a problem. Enter the hacker mindset or a programmer mindset where you build things. You build a Jira clone, you build a Twitter clone just for the love of it, just to learn programming, just to try out different frameworks. Build something. Don't think of it becoming famous. The thing is start. It can be a small command line utility. Like many people have not even published to npm. It's an easy thing to do. Just learn how to publish to npm. Build a small to-do app. Build, maybe Rust is very popular these days. So you see something that is done in JavaScript, try to do it in Rust. Do some benchmarking, share your learnings. So don't try to build something for somebody else or even for yourself. Just get into that mindset where you are building things, something. And when you're through this journey, when you are doing that, then you will naturally encounter things that, oh, this is actually missing. And I'm going to build that. That's how you find out. You will never find out the problems to solve by looking for them. You will only find it when you are actually through the journey of hacking, building some things, building cool projects for your own sake. And also don't worry that everything that has to be solved has already been solved. There are no good ideas anymore. No, I still find ideas when I do this, right? There are plenty of ideas. Maybe they are not at the stage where they can be as big as, it can grow really big, but there are still a lot of tiny ideas that you can implement.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you sort of answered my last question as well.
Okay.
So yeah, I'm done. But if anyone in the chat has any questions, take it up.
Are there any questions?
Uh, no, I don't see any. There's somebody who recommended Tory Rust.
Somebody is saying that I'm having a headache. Abhi need. Oh, it's Vishal. I thought
It's
somebody in the
Vishal
community was
actually.
like getting a headache from hearing this.
Vishal didn't sleep last night.
Yeah. I also can I do, like probably speak a small closing note if there's no questions.
Sure. Yeah.
First, I want to thank you, Ansh, for giving the opportunity, for inviting me to come here and to talk to these students. Very thankful to you for reaching out and your support that you as an individual are giving to Bruno. I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful to Vishal Arya. He has been leading FOSS United. He's been doing a fantastic job. I'm learning things. To me, I'm 33. 6 months. I've just started open source and stuff in the last 6 months. So I want to thank you guys for supporting us. And FOSS United. All my life, I was a programmer, but I am glad that FOSS United as a community exists where I find it a bit like my home in the sense, um, like many people in when I post some things on LinkedIn, people complain used to tell me that Anoop, LinkedIn is for some things, Facebook is for some things. You're posting Facebook stuff on LinkedIn, but in my opinion, I only use LinkedIn for sharing everything because I saw that that is my community. The people that I work with are my community. I don't have a second community outside. So Fast United has been my second, I when I come and post there, it's a like-minded group of people. I want to thank Rushabh and Kailash for setting this up and so many volunteers. It's all, I know that all of you are doing this not for some, at least with me, with Bruno, there is an ulterior monetary thing, right?
Right.
We do open source, but you guys are, volunteering and, doing this. So, thank you to all the volunteers who run FOSS United, all the FOSS Club initiatives. This is really helpful for students. I wish when I was in my college, there was a FOSS Club that I could join and learn from, right? So I'm thankful for you guys doing this. That's all from
Yes.
my
So,
yeah.
thank you so much, Anoop, for joining. And thanks, folks, for listening. Let's wrap it up. All right. Bye, folks.
Thanks, everyone.